Hey everyone, my name is Alex Ballou. I'm going to be showing you how I made my signature dish for Gordon Ramsay on the first episode of Hell's Kitchen Season 21, spice crusted salmon with a Carolina gold rice, maple roasted carrots, and a chorizo broth. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start prepping our sauce. So we have some chorizo, an onion, and some garlic, and that's really the only knife work that we need to do. So we'll go ahead and start chopping that up. We're going to use a good majority of this chorizo, and we're going to render the fat down, and that's going to give us a ton of flavor. And you don't have to be really precise about your knife cuts because this is all going to be pureed in a blender when it's done. So just chop them up very roughly. And then we will throw that into our hex-clad pot. And then I'm going to go ahead and get our onion and our garlic minced up as well. That way we can get that started. Our next step is to get our carrots going. So I have these beautiful baby tri-colored carrots, and we're going to roast those in the oven with some oil and salt. And then once they're fully cooked, we'll glaze them on the stove with some butter and maple syrup and a little bit of Aleppo pepper to get them nice and caramelized and sweet. It'll really help contrast that smoky, spicy chorizo broth. So we're going to do a little bit of oil. And you want them nicely coated so they will caramelize and start to take on some color. And then just some kosher salt. Very simply, roll them around. Do some cracked black pepper. Into the oven they go. For our salmon, I feel like it's a very crucial point of doing this to any kind of seafood. I like to dry cure all of my seafood. So I have a mixture of 60% salt, 40% sugar. I've already filleted my salmon pieces. This is Verlasso salmon. It's phenomenal aquaculture, great product, very well taken care of. So I'm going to take my salt and my sugar mixture, and I'm going to liberally coat all sides of the salmon. This is a technique that I do for every piece of fish that I get. It does a few things. So what you're doing, you are tightening up the fish by letting it remove the excess moisture. You're killing any bacteria that may be on the surface, and you're also seasoning the fish. So that salt and that sugar is gonna really penetrate and start to build layers of flavor. And then we're gonna rinse that off in cold water and pat it dry, and then we'll go from there. For my salmon, I like to use a mixture of coriander and Szechuan peppercorns. It gives you a very floral and a little bit tingly effect on the salmon. So we're going to make that a coarse grind. So I have a mortar and pestle. I'm going to do some Szechuan peppercorns. I usually do about 50-50, and some coriander seed. And take your grinder and just start grinding your spices up. You're not looking for a fine powder here. We're going to slowly cook the salmon in a skillet, and it's going to make the crust both stick, and it's going to toast those spices to really bring out the flavor. And by using a mortar and pestle, you release all the oils in the seeds and spices, allowing much more flavor to come through. There we go. That's what we're looking for. All right, so we've got our water with some bay leaves and salt going for our rice. I'm gonna start to render down the chorizo for our sauce. While that's going, I'm also gonna roast these red peppers to get the skin off and add some smokiness to those. Rice. Generally, you want to do a 2-to-1 rice ratio, but this is Carolina gold rice, so it's not as starchy. So we're going to have a lot of water with some flavor. And then we're going to add in our rice. That's going to cook for about 11 minutes. Just give that a nice stir. Let it come back up to a boil, and then turn that down. Let these peppers char. Let this chorizo render. Once that chorizo starts to release its fat and soften up, we're going to add our onions and our garlic. We're just going to sweat these onions and garlic down until they're translucent. So our onions are nice and translucent. I'm gonna add half a can of fire roasted tomatoes and some smoked paprika. Give that a good stir. We're gonna let those tomatoes cook down for about 3 to 4 minutes. While that's going, we will take our red peppers. And we're gonna take our red peppers, put them into a Ziploc bag, and close that up. And we're gonna let that steam for about 10 minutes and then peel all that skin off. Our rice has been boiling for 10 to 12 minutes, and now we're going to drain it out, put it on a sheet tray, and then we're gonna dry it at a 300-degree oven for 10 minutes. So the reason that we want to dry our rice is that we want to evaporate all of the excess water content that's inside the rice, and then we're gonna melt some butter on it. So that's gonna allow the water to absorb, but then the butter to melt, or the water to evaporate, but then the butter will melt and the rice will absorb the butter. This is one of the best rice dishes you'll ever have. Make sure you pull out your bay leaves and spread your rice out onto a sheet tray. And then you're gonna put that in a 300-degree oven for about 10 minutes. Cool. Now that our peppers have steamed, we are going to pull the skin off of our roasted peppers. It comes off super simple. A lot of people would like to wash the skin off. Unfortunately, you lose too much flavor and some of the oils when you do that. So you gotta use your fingers, get in there, get dirty, play with your food. It's all good. Once you've gotten off the majority of that charred flesh, open up your pepper, take the top off, peel out those seeds, and then this is gonna go straight into the broth. So all of our ingredients for our chorizo broth are in the pot. We're gonna add some chicken stock. And then bring that up to a boil, let that simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we will blend that up, add some sherry vinegar and some butter. Woo, so good. So our salmon has been curing for about 10 to 15 minutes, and you can see all the moisture that's risen to the top of the fillet is the excess moisture that was inside the salmon. So we're removing that, we're gonna firm up the flesh and season at the same time. Now we're gonna rinse it off with some cold water and make sure that it's super duper dry. Here we are. Now just fold that over. Make sure your salmon fillets are very, very dry so the spice crust can adhere. Once that's dry, we'll move it onto a sheet tray, and then we will put a touch of olive oil on. We will salt the fillet, and then we will apply our spice crust to it as well. Make sure that you press it down. You really want those spices to adhere to the salmon. That's it, and then we'll be ready to cook those. So our salmon pan is over medium heat. You don't want it any higher than that. We're trying to create a crust and let these spices toast. We want the spices to toast while the salmon is cooking through at the same time. So we're going to go crust side down, and you should not hear a huge sizzle because we want this to take its time. We're gonna let the salmon cook on the spice side about 60 to 70%. Then we will flip it over and then add butter and baste it. So our salmon is maybe about halfway there. You can see the color changing, but it's really cool. Look at the spice crust. All these spices are getting nice and toasty. They're stuck to the actual flesh of the salmon. It's gonna make such a good piece of fish. You get all those floral notes from the coriander, the tingly effect from Szechuan peppercorn, and then that with the richness of the salmon, it just goes so well together. So good. All right, so we're gonna flip our salmon over slowly and carefully. We're gonna add some butter to the pan. She's gonna add another depth of flavor. We're gonna baste that, and when the salmon is finished, we will let it rest and hit it with a little bit of fresh lemon. Be gentle and just lay that butter right over those spices. And then we're gonna add some fresh lemon right over the top. We're gonna pull our rice out, let that rest for a few minutes, and then right before we plate it up, we're gonna hit that with some butter and some lemon juice in a skillet. It's gonna be so light and fluffy. Tastes like buttered popcorn. So good. Okay. We're gonna finish glazing our carrots. So we're gonna throw some butter into our skillets. I'm gonna add a little bit of maple syrup. That will start to bubble up, and a few shakes of Aleppo pepper for some spice. And once that comes to a boil, that will start to glaze our carrots nicely. We've also got our pan for our rice on the heat, and then we're going to saute our rice with a little bit of butter and lemon and some salt, and then we will plate up our dish. Carrots are glazed. See, it's nicely reduced, and nice and sticky, sweet and spicy, fully cooked. Rice is amazing. It's fluffy. Hit it with some lemon juice. That is it. It's time to blend the sauce. This is where it all starts to kind of come together. It's been boiling and reducing for about 15 to 20 minutes. We're gonna add all of these ingredients to our blender. Put it on. Make sure you put the lid on. It's also very nice to have a towel. And make sure your blender's on low. Turn it on. Slowly bring it up to speed. Once everything is nicely pureed, I'm going to start to emulsify in some butter and a little bit of sherry vinegar. And I'm going to add about 1 gram of xanthan gum to make sure that everything is really nicely emulsified. The sauce is a little bit thicker. Check the seasoning. Needs a little bit of salt, and definitely needs that xanthan gum to tighten up. Yum. All right, plate up time. So we're gonna start with our rice. We're gonna put that on the left side of the plate. And this is seriously the best rice in the world. Some rice. And we have our glazed baby carrots that are beautifully roasted. Got all kinds of colors on there. And we'll finish that with a piece of our salmon right on top. And then that's finished off with our chorizo broth. And there it is. Spice crusted salmon, Carolina gold rice, maple roasted carrots, and a chorizo broth. It's that simple. Gordon gave it a 5. What about you?